in Lavendar.
We weren't forcibly removed. Like the people that got the vans and the lorries to take them to Mannenberg. We were given notices to come here. Yeah.
The people just move out quietly. The white man said, if you're not going to move out, we're going to chuck you out. That my mother was very afraid. So they somewhat took the place now. They got in Grassy Park.
In fact, my mom did not want to move. What we did as an option, we went to the next street, which was Matthew Road, in Claremont, Harfield Village, and we stayed for a few years at our granny's place.
I was the last to stay in this side of the main road in Claremont.
But then eventually, because her place was a place that was rented or leased, he sold the property, and when he sold, the new owners then forced us out.
When all the people was out, all of them in this side, I still stayed there for 14 years.
There's one family, they're still living there. They said they'll never move, and they're still staying in Durham Street.
Oh, they said to me, you'll have to sell. They're going to give us so much per square meter for our property, and we can get this for our house. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not moving.
They first gave me a place in Lavendar Hill, and that was on the 3rd story. And I refused to take that flat.
They sent me a form to fill in that I have no intention of moving. Then comes the next form. If you have no intention of moving, we will declare your property, some word, vulnerable, I suppose.
I was a builder, and I had scaffolding, and in the slaughter also I had sheep and all that. So I told the inspector, look, where am I going to put this stuff? So he just looked at me and he went away.
We will send a valuator to give you a market value. Besides, there is a basic value. And the difference between the basic and the market is what you, the owner of the property, has to pay in order to remain in your own house.
So when he came back to with the key, I showed him a plan. So I had that plot in Grassy Park, here where I stay now. I said, look, I'm busy building. So I worked around for 10 years.
I just said, Lord, help this man to keep the value down. And then, of course, I pointed out to him the cracks in the building.
The estate agent that sold our properties sold it unto himself. He sold it unto himself.
Some of those people did have sympathy. And I can still see this nice tall man standing in the kitchen looking at the house to write down the value of the property.
Because the first move was it was sold. We sold, they had to sell it for the meagre amount of £12,000 that time.
So I go to Cape Town, to the office. It was in Rowland Street in those days. Yes, this big boerevrou.
Because I told the lady at the council office, I'm sorry, but I must jump from my door. I must jump onto my bed because I can't get into the room.
I said, now I've come to ask you if you will please allow me to pay this amount in installments. She said, jy betaal binne 30 dae, anders is jy uit.
So she said, well, then leave some of your furniture outside. My answer to her was, you did not work for that furniture, so why must I accept this flat?
Talk about verbal abuse. Those people know it. They don't have to be in Lavendar Hill or those other townships to learn it. They've got it.
lot of poor people lived in that Harfield village. Very, very poor people lived in there. They were all forced out and forced to take places like Mannenberg,
Bridgetown, Bonteville, Lavendar Hill,
Hanover Park, and Mannenberg.
and Steenberg, and the Retreat, and the Nova Park in Bonteville.
Hanover Park, or Lavendar Hill, or Bonteville, or Mannenberg.
Some went to Mount View, Retreat, all over. People were scattered all over.
And certainly all the gangs used to rise up in these areas.
And life out there is different to what it was in Harfield.
That kind of situation of having your privacy and owning property to now becoming a council dweller in a flat of 3 stories.
That was too tight, that houses, 4 houses, there was no way that you could get around to the back. Everything was one way, straight through the front door, out by the back door.
Anyone is next to you, you know. And I mean, as you know, there's no privacy in that. It's most.
Sub-economic.
So then people that stays upstairs must come down to play with and mix with the wrong children, and eventually, you know what's the results.
My children, they grew up in Steenberg. Only the eldest one was in Claremont. The children never worried with the neighbors' kids because I taught them to stay in the yard because I saw the danger outside.
Having to share community, washing lines, playground there was hardly ever.
And the walls were so thin, there was no privacy for people.
I stayed in Retreat for 12 years, and when Lavendar Hill started, gangs were formed. That time a famous movie came out that called Walking Tall. They used to run around with axe handles, pick handles, and they take your tins, where those tin rubbish tins, they take the lids off as a shield, and they would fight with one another.
The humiliation that you had to suffer in terms of where you come from, what you had, and now being robbed of what you actually own.
I stayed in a double-story flat. They ran right up to my door, just looking for some people, some scholars. And we didn't grow up like that, so I said, no, man, this is no way I can let my children come. So I bought this plot, and we built here, and I moved out.
Up till today, I still can't find my feet in Steenberg.
With the Group Areas Act. That was a disaster. Claremont became quite a bit of a ghost town for many years.
It breaks your heart. It breaks your heart to see all the changes that's been made.
The area became like a dead area. There was a deafening silence, I put it to you that way. Traffic in the road, yes, but a deafening silence in the streets.
It was a little bit sad. I mean, even now if I pass there, then I always look at the house. And with the children, I said, there we stayed.
I really can't explain from inside how you feel when you walk past your old house.
Once we walk past our house there, and the gentleman was standing outside and he said, I was born in this house. So he told me, do you know how much it costs now? I said, I've got nothing to do about the cost. I'm just telling you that I was born in this house.
It's painful when I walk past the house, or if I walk with somebody, then I would tell them, that was my house, you see there.
I've forgotten about that experience, but I remember I was totally upset, very upset.
All the people was upset. I mean, you can imagine, all the time you live together, and all of a sudden you separated.
Especially the old people, they were uprooted. And that was one of the worst things that could have happened to the older people.
That breaks your hearts. Because the people that could afford, they bought the houses And the people, also nice people. Even the people that stayed next to you, they couldn't afford, they throw in Mannenberg.
I had a best friend by the name of Masruna, and she lived in Harfield Village, and she said that we had to get out of the area. We were told that we need to leave, and they had to relocate us in Athlone.
Oh, it was very sad. There, these two lovely little cottages in Hereford Street. They stayed there till the last. Let me tell you, if I must paint a picture of a sad, sad person.
It was such a pity because we were so close that unfortunately we had to break up because we had to then just go our own separate ways, and there was no way in which I could communicate with her because they couldn't afford a telephone, and also her father in fact just said to her that she needed to go out and work.
Everybody had moved. And that Sunday morning when I walked up to church, I said to her, "Is jy nog hier?" She was looking so sad. She said, "Madam, ek weet nie waar om te gaan nie. Die kinders is allemaal weg. Hulle het allemaal hulle plekke hier staan. Ek weet nie waar om te gaan nie."
The majority of our customers were people from the avenues, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Avenue, and all the crisscross roads. Those people now had moved out. We lost out on that, but they lost out on their homes. I suppose that's a bigger loss than what we lost out on.
I felt very bitter. I think at that point in time in my life, I realized what apartheid was actually all about.
You know, he got sick. He suffered inside, you know. He was a man of little words also, you know. But we could see.
That was a very sad time. I get tears in my eyes now if I think of Oupa Swats of Lincoln Street. Oupa Swats died in his house because he just didn't want it to be uprooted from his home.
He used to walk to Claremont, take the train Saturday mornings to town. He used to love going to town, you know, and look around on the parade and so on, take a train again back. Buy his snoek. He was very fond of snoek and a packet of sweet and fruit when he comes home.
For her to travel to come visit you was impossible because it was too expensive.
We weren't used to paying taxi fare and train fare. We walked up to Claremont, and that time it was sticky and 6pence with a bus.
I continued going to schooling at Livingston, and I now had to travel to Livingston.
Then they got to take a train from Harfield to Wynberg, for Wynberg, a taxi to Grassy Park, walk a little distance still from the bus stop to the house.
I never realized the impact of apartheid at that point in time because it was just something normal that we were subjected to, being colored and subjected to being second-class citizens, if I may.
We didn't know about 4 Rand and 7 Rand for a taxi, and you must ride in 3rd class and you pack like sardines. That is something that we didn't understand.
Getting to a bus and sitting at the back and using a public toilet where it says non-whites only, and going to facilities like beaches and restricted, very small space, for example, Cork Bay.
It was a fun-loving community. They ran concerts, live concerts. We had the Orpheum Theatre in the main road.
What we did as children, you know, the young people went up to the Orpheum Bioscope in Claremont, no? And then summertime, then we lay and wait for them, then we put a white sheet over us.
That was a fun, the Orpheum Bioscope. Because every year, when you come out of the mosque, you go to Bioscope. When you come out of work, go to Bioscope. It's almost like a...
That's the
a center, yeah.
And then when they now still walk lekker and free, you know, and they stand against the fence and free, then we say, woo, then you just see them shoot.
Old movies I can remember was Green Dolphin Street, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, Gone with the Wind.
All the kids used to come hang out, the Livingstonians, the primary school kids from Rosemead Primary School. And I always remember that the kids from Livingston, when they used to come there, they'd always want to get a cigarette from my dad. And they always say, put it on the book.
Of course, westerns. There was all these westerns. I can name a few, like Gene Autry, Roy Rogers, Sunset Carson, Charles Terrett, Rocky Lane.
My father would always say, no, but you're still at school. I'm not going to give you the cigarettes. And the police station was just across the road, right opposite us.
Where the police station used to be was an estate called Claridge. It was a massive old house. And that estate was where they had the school.
Opposite Lavendar School, on the other side where the post office is now, there was also a school, a class, but it was only bush. It was an old double-story house, and we used to go and play there.
Livingston actually had classes. They never had enough place here for their children, and they actually had classes in Ispoekhuis.
Early in the mornings, we always have the policemen coming in there, and they'd also run a little book, and then they'll tell my dad, you know, when we get paid at the end of the month, you know, can we have some cigarettes or bread or milk, and we'll pay you for it. And my dad always used to just give in, because he always used to say, you know, they're just across the road, they are policemen, and they will settle their book.
And sometimes there's a competition.
Singing competition.
And you can imagine how the people go into
talent contest and all that. Yes.
I have wonderful memories of 2nd Avenue, especially when it comes to Christmas time, when we have the Christmas choirs, the young guiding stars, parading Sunday evenings.
December and January. Every Sunday, we used to walk in that main road, because we were waiting on the Christmas bands to come along. We used to call them choirs.
It's New Year's time and Christmas. Oh yeah, Christmas, and it's very nice. Now we see the coons and the klopster and the choirs.
These were the bands that played for the Malay teams, or the coons, or all that was. We used to call it klopster at that time.
I remember as a young guy growing up here in Tasman at Claremont, if there was a strong southeaster blowing, from September onwards you'd hear the sounds of the Malay choirs.
And we'd have people hustle and bustle in 2nd Avenue. And then New Year's Day we'd see all the coons coming down 2nd Avenue. It was a popular road.
Oh yes, we don't sleep that time. It was very alive there.
I think we had the best childhood days, because that's why we can still talk about it.
My neighbours used to make me a kite every year. I loved the kites, and they taught me to play top and marbles, and I grew up with those traditions.
In those days, the mothers didn't have to work, so she would make for us children kites. She'd get the cane, cut it up, make a paste with flour and water, make the kites for our children. We could fly the kites in the village because there weren't so many overhead wires.
We would play on the field, yes, and make kites with August paper, Kurantpapier kite, with a long stick.
I loved flying kites, and who could make a kite better than Jack Hendricks from around the corner? And those are the guys that I used to play with after school.
We played sport, and mostly cricket and rugby, is because we stayed near the rugby and cricket grounds.
Our game was netball and Anteklippe. We used to play on the corners.
We had a fella, a Muslim chappie. He was from Lancaster Street, Hamarim they called him. And he would, especially school holiday, he would take us on the field opposite our house. And all the children, Muslim and Christian, would gather on that field. And he would play drieblokkies and whatever games, just to keep the kids together.
Then she would make for us kennetjies, a stick of wood about that size, whittle it down each side. We children would have to take a stick, hit, like that. Those were our games.
It was 3 tins that you put on top of each other. Then you have a team that would field for the ball, and your team you would throw, and then you must throw all of. Then we run, and we must try to get the 3 tins on again.
We keep 8, 7 stones, and we play handeklippe, netball. You must take the pole on the wall. That is now our post when you put the ball in.
We could play in the roads in those days. There wasn't so much traffic.
And you treasure all those things when you remember the people that sold the eggs and the chickens, and Mrs. Green with the sisters on a Sunday morning. You know, you remember all those things that comes up in your mind.
People don't seem to be moving around with one another. We could go into every house and, you know, everybody was your friend. But now all the houses is closed and high fences, and you don't see the people around.
If you think Man op Stokke, he'd stay on the corner of Rutland Street, and you remember him. He's passed on years ago, but you still remember him.
Well, you can never bring back the past. Never ever.
We live amongst the community, we benefit from the community, we're part of the community. What more can I say?
Harfield was good times, man. The good times. Honestly, you will never ever forget Harfield. If you never stayed in Harfield, you can't talk about Harfield.